We're going to be talking about 13 of my favorite books that defined my taste as a reader. I'm going to be giving quick synopses from these, what exactly I loved from these books, and what I look for in future reads that I pulled from these books in the first place. Most of these I have physically since they are my favorite books, but some of them I either can't find in my library right now or I read them digitally and haven't found the perfect copy yet. Hello book besties and welcome back to my channel. Let's first start off with a wonderful book, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually audiobooked this when I read it and it was my first historical fiction read, and this is what made me fall in love with like the historical fiction genre because I thought it would be extremely boring learning about things that could have happened but didn't. And for those of you that don't know, this is based off of Lindsay Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. We have Daisy Jones and she's kind of coming up as this really rough girl who has an amazing voice, and then we have Billy and his brother and some other friends that have a band, and basically this record label takes them and puts them together and they create Daisy Jones and the Six, and it's just basically a love letter to 70s rock and roll. I am completely obsessed. She kind of reminds me of Jenny from Forrest Gump, which is one of my favorite complicated characters. So she's a very complicated character, and everybody in this book, they do things and it's just very human of them. I really love the audiobook because it gives you different voices for all the different characters, and you're getting the perspective of every character from the band basically around multiple different main events. So that's kind of how this book is laid out. It's tragic, it's dramatic, and it's very human. What I basically pulled from this one being one of my favorite books is the fact that just because something can be more realistic, it doesn't mean it's going to be boring, and the fact that historical fiction can be extremely entertaining. And I also realized that I do like very dramatic, messy stories, very deeply layered characters with a lot of emotion and background. Another very emotional read that I also did audiobook is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. So this is a phenomenal emotional read. So this is about Wallace, and he lived like a very cranky, boring life. He does wind up dying in this book, and that's like the whole premise of it. It's not a spoiler. He basically gets taken by a reaper, and he gets taken to this little tea shop called, I think it's Charon's Crossing, and a man named Hugo runs it, and he basically just finds a found family in Hugo who helps people cross over, and Hugo is in charge of helping people cross over, helping them figure out what they did wrong in life, helping them discover their perfect tea that makes them remember their best memory. This is basically a story about learning from what you did in life and starting over. It is so cozy. This, I learned that I love cozy reads and that I love a good romance. This was probably one of my first, and I just thought it was so sweet and endearing, and again, those layered, deep emotional characters. Now for a complete switch up from those last two, we have Pucking Around by Emily Rath. I loved this book so much. I will never stop recommending this for my hockey girlies. I know that hockey is a very popular genre right now with heated rivalry. I read this probably a year or two ago, and this is what made me fall in love with hockey romance. I've always been a hockey girly. I played field hockey in high school, and I've always watched it, and now I watch like professional ice hockey, but this is amazing. I know some people say they don't like it, but I don't know if it was just the time that I read it, but I flew through this book, and it is a thick boy. This is about Rachel Price, and she's the new athletic trainer for this new hockey team, the Jacksonville Rays, and she finds three boys that she absolutely loves, and they kind of create this little perfect found family, and it is very spicy, but again, it's both and her with multiple men, so I just adore it. I think it's really lovely to see very masculine sports players fall in love with another man. Like, that's what I love about it's just so sweet and endearing, and you get to see the toughest people on their exterior just be mushy for someone else, and I love it so much. This one made me realize that I love hockey romance. This one helped me discover Why Choose, which is probably one of my favorite things in books, but I highly recommend this if you are into spice because there is a ton of spice in this, but again, found family, that's another one. I love when people just come together and form their own little family. It's so stinking cute. This next one is again like a slower, more character-driven novel, but this one's more gothic, and I love that. So this is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is it's basically about a vampire kind of like Dracula, and it's supposed to be like Dracula's first bride, so it's Constanta, and he basically finds these people at their weakest points mutants and turns them into vampires and kind of traps them. He's very controlling with them. So this is actually in second person. So this is Constanta writing to her husband and kind of retelling their story about how he found her, how they traveled and lived through history together since they lived for so long, and how they acquired more brides and grooms basically for their little family. Again, found family, why choose? Love that. This is just extremely deep and raw with the emotions for her husband and for the people they are basically collecting along the way. The gothic descriptors of this are amazing, and I love seeing a story that though they live for so long that they're seeing these regimes rise and fall. I think that's so interesting, and you can kind of say it's kind of a little bit like a historical fiction in a way, but I love the absolute passion that these characters show. So this one again made me realize I love like a slow character driven story with extremely passionate obsessive love. Then we have an absolute mind bender of a book, and that's Bunny by Mona Awad. I think she's either getting her master's or her PhD in fictional writing. She joins this group, and it's like 5 of these elite students that got chosen. It's her and 4 other girls. She joins the company of these 4 or 5 other girls in her writing group, and they are a clique. They are a hive mind, and they are weird. They call each other Bunny, and they are extremely disturbing. So she winds up joining their writing group, and extremely disturbing, very fever dreamy things happen, and the end of this book absolutely boggles your mind. I think that from this I learned that I love a good twisty, disturbing tale, and sometimes I really love to be confused when I'm reading. I love to not know what's going on until the end, and then I can look back and be like, oh my god, that was happening the entire time and I didn't even see it. Speaking of another dark and twisty tale, we have Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. Alice Feeney is one of my favorite thriller writers. Now, normally thrillers don't get me with the twist, but this one is insane. Alice Feeney gets me time and time again. I never see the ending coming. So this is about a girl. She goes to her Nana's house for her 90th birthday or something, and it's kind of like on an island, and her family get stranded there overnight because the tide rolls in and they can't drive out because it's flooded. At midnight, 1 person every hour keeps dying, and there's like these cryptic messages. Someone is leaving them like videos to watch, and we're trying to figure out this entire twisted tale and what is going on, and the ending you will never see coming. But this one made me realize I am obsessed with a fast-paced thriller novel that has an absolutely undeterminable ending. I love a good twist. My next one is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This is set in the 70s. Wayward houses are where pregnant girls in the 70s, they used to be sent. So if their family determined that they were pregnant when they were teenagers, they would send them to these wayward houses where they would live for a few months, have their babies, give them up for adoption, and then be sent back home like nothing happened. So we have our main character in this one, and she's just extremely confused. Her family is extremely awful to her, and she just wants to leave. She meets these 3 other girls that she bonds with, and they go to this moving library bus that comes to the house, and they meet a woman who gives them a book on witchcraft. And this kind of gets into the nitty-gritty of witchcraft, specifically like if you think about like southern witchcraft, which is out under the moon, dancing naked, things like that. This is very much so a novel that discusses that knowledge is power. So if these girls have this knowledge to determine their futures and determine their fate, they have the power of the world in their hands, and I love that. But their witchcraft does go wrong, and it just holds such a wonderful 70s Stevie Nicks vibes. What I learned from this one, again, is a slow character-driven novel, and that I really love witchcraft in books, especially when it's very raw and naturalistic. I love it so much. Now, I do want to do a quick shout out to the series that 1 got me into reading and 2 got me into fantasy, and that's the ACOTAR series by SJM. I know everybody loves this series. I'm not going to do a synopsis of this, but I was always very adverse to anything that said like queen, fantasy, swords, anything like that, and now that is my favorite. I cannot get enough of that stuff. I do just have to mention that because it is the series that got me back into reading and that got me into fantasy, which is what's filling my shelves all behind me. Now I want to talk about one of my favorite horror novels of all time. That's The Eyes of the Best Part by Monica Kim. I've talked about this one time and time again, but I will never stop recommending it. Follow our main character, and she is Korean. Her father just left her mother, and she has her and her sister. So her mom starts dating this really obnoxious man she meets online, and he is fetishizing them for being Korean, and he's also fetishizing them as like younger girls, which is just absolutely disgusting. So we we have our main character's absolute unbridled rage manifests in a physical manner, and she begins eating eyes. And I love a good feminine rage story. I just think that the physical manifestation of this was so intriguing, and the story was so emotional, and I just loved this absolute entire journey for her. So what I learned from this one was that I love feminine rage in books. I love creepy, grotesque stories, and again, I just love a good character-driven book. Another one that I absolutely love is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This is a story about a young boy and his mother. They're living in this town that is basically like feudal Japan, while the rest of the world is living in like modern Tokyo. So it's very interesting to see the discrepancy, and the mom grew up in the more city-like area where it's just very modern, and she comes and marries a man who lives in this place that still has the ideals of like feudal Japan. Where they live is like the first place that like enemy will hit, so the government bolsters them as like the strongest warriors, the first line of defense. Their main goal in life is basically to die for their country, and a young boy from more of like the city, modern city area moves here and starts to tell our main character that everything he learned growing up is wrong, and that the government and his town is lying to them. And then we get the mother's perspective of how there is sexism in this community, how she's treated by not only her husband but her father-in-law as well, even though she's like this kick-ass warrior from when she was younger. In this one, I realized I really love a deep like fantasy magic system where like there was an entire dictionary in the front that I had to like keep looking back at to see these words and their meaning. And again, this is like another feminine rage story. Now, another book that I have physically but I can't find in my library is Enchantra by Kaylee Smith. This one is such a good whimsical gothic read. This is the second novel in the Wicked Games series by Kaylee Smith. So we have Phantasm as the first one. I liked that one but didn't love it as much as I love Enchantra. So we have Genevieve, which is Ophelia's sister from the first one, and she's a specter. She goes to find the children of someone her mother was friends with, and she wants to just basically see how other children that were like kind of paranormal grew up and maybe share some of her childhood with them. So she winds up accidentally entering this house on the night where they made a deal with the devil, so every year these kids have to compete against each other in basically this like murderous game of hide and go seek. So she has to marry one of the brothers. She joins this competition with him. They have to hide all around this beautiful gothic mansion. There's a ballroom scene, there's enchanted rooms, there's familiars. It's just such a beautiful book. And again, this has that deep, passionate love, forced proximity that I like to see between two main characters in more of a romance heavy novel, and then just the whimsy and gothic elements to this story make it amazing. We have my last, most recent obsession, which is Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. I also have that one downstairs. I've watched the show 3 times. I've read the book. I haven't read the long game yet, but Heated Rivalry definitely is cementing something in my brain, further cementing MM romance for me. And again, that like passion over time, that slow burn build, that yearning to be together but they can't. So kind of like a forbidden romance. Just definitely a long-term yearning. I love that. It just makes the relationship so much more beautiful, and the stakes are higher, so the payoff is better. The emotional yearning with an amazing payoff is what I learned from this book and from the show as well. With those amazing actors, I'm completely obsessed. So basically what these 13 books have taught me about myself now that I look back is that I love deep emotional romantic yearning. I love a multifaceted, multi-layered, character-driven story. I love gothic and whimsical settings. Those add so much to the story for me. And I also just love cozy books with such like a sentimental feeling. Let me know if these are any of your favorite books. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite books are, if not any of these. And let me know what types of stories you guys like to read. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for future content. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, okay, love you, bye.